Everyone, I'd like to thank Lenny Green, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and Oblivion View for organizing this event, allowing us to come together to discuss this serious threat to our communities. There's a psychoanalysis test called word association. When someone tells you a word and they ask you to say the first thing that comes to mind, they usually tell you don't think, just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. So tonight I want us to do the total opposite. I want us to sit here and think critically and really delve into this issue that we're talking about tonight, the prison industrial complex. So no word association tonight. Lockdown, the prison industrial complex. Those that are in power have found a way to profit monetarily from incarcerating Americans. The Americans they overwhelmingly incarcerate are African Americans and Hispanics, and from the inner cities. The U.S. is the world's leading jailer. Think about that. We're supposed to be the bastion of freedom. We're the world's leading jailer. 2.4 million Americans are in jail. An additional 5 million Americans on parole, probation, house arrest, or some form of supervision. In contrast, China, which is over 1.4 billion people, is in a distant second to America with only 1.6 million people in jail. America has 5% of the world's population, yet we have 23% of the world's prison population. 1 in 8 African Americans are in jail, 1 in 20 Latinos, and whites, 1 in 45. Over the last 20 years, crime rates in the U.S. have fallen over 25%, but we've seen a steady increase in the number of people incarcerated, over 200%. Crime has dropped, but more people are incarcerated. How to explain this discrepancy? American capitalism is the culprit. I've recently heard a new term called American capitalist matrix. It's this matrix that's at the root of all industrial complexes. There's many to choose from. Military industrial complex, college industrial complex, cyber industrial complex, healthcare industrial complex. I digress. We said we wouldn't play word association. So let me get to the complex at hand, the prison industrial complex. Of all the profit-driven industries, the prison industrial complex is easily one of the most sinister. The PIC systematically conditions all of us to believe that it's a necessary component of our society. It's ingrained in us to want to lock up the so-called bad people. While we continue to live with this false sense of dependency, the prison industrial complex targets our youth, is bringing back slave labor, and is working across a vast network to disenfranchise our communities. To put it bluntly, they are targeting black and brown communities, and more so, our youth, to find the best practices to turn them into inmates. Let's take a look at prisons themselves. There's 2 distinct types. There's the private prison system, and there's the state and federal prison system. Privately owned, all of the privately owned prisons have shareholders and sell their shares on Wall Street. Many of these prisons have investors before the structures are even built. These investors expect a return on their investments. It's in their best interest to keep the prisons full to maximize their profits. A Correction Corporation of America facility in Arizona was credited with helping Pinal County, Arizona, with being ranked #1 in a Money Magazine survey ranking the top 25 counties that have experienced greatest job growth in the past 8 years. So as you peel back the anatomy of the prison industrial complex, you have profit and you have job growth for municipalities. Human rights activists have raised concerns about the morality of imprisoning humans for profit. Traded on the New York Stock Exchange, investors have an interest in keeping private prisons filled. Industry experts say a profitable prison must have a 90 to 95% capacity rate. In a 1990 report, Prudential Securities was bullish on CCA, but noted, and I quote, It takes time to bring inmate populations levels up to where they cover costs. Low occupancy is a drag on profits. Company earnings will be strong if CCA is succeeding in ramping up the population levels in its new facilities to an acceptable rate. According to the Boston Phoenix, CCA spent more than $2.77 million from 2006 to 2008 lobbying for stricter laws, lobbying in Congress. Many would like to demonize private prisons as the cause of the abuse in the industry, but there's enough blame to go around. Let's take a look at the state and federal prisons. They're selling inmate labor. We all know that inmates sew their own garments, but they've taken it to a new level. In the 90s, a subcontractor, third generation, hired 35 female South Carolina inmates to sew lingerie and leisure wear for JCPenney and Victoria's Secret. I guess Vicky's Secret is out there now. In '97, a California prison put 2 men in solitary confinement for telling journalists they were ordered to replace "Made in Honduras" labels on the back of the shirts to "Made in USA." Federal Prison Industries, aka Unicor, says that in addition to soldier uniforms, bedding, shoes, helmets, and flak jackets, inmates have produced missile cables, including those used on Patriot missiles during the Gulf War, and wiring harnesses for jets and tanks. In 1997, according to the Prison Legal News, Boeing subcontractor Microjet had prisoners cutting airplane components, paying them only $7 an hour, which is comparable to what they were paying on the outside at $30 an hour. So at the same time, they're union busting. Can you read between the lines? There's a $sign attached to each and every one of us, each and every inmate. And worse, there's a bigger yield on their investments as they put $signs on potential inmates. The pool of potential inmates, that's our youth, our future. Our prisons, both private and state and federal, have become a profit-driven industry that reaps huge profits from the incarceration of inmates. They're in the business of locking people up, and business is good. All of us here in the room are unwilling participants in the prison industrial complex. Don't be fooled. It's not about crime and punishment. It's about targeting our youth and making them as susceptible to fall prey to the system. There's vast networks that they use to keep the prisons full. I need you to stay with me here. Some of those networks they use are the media. You see it every night on Channel 4, Channel 2, Channel 5. They put people like us having crime all day long, like we don't do anything else. Television programming, police tactics, like he talked about, the courts, and worst off, our schools. A few years ago, our billionaire mayor asked to have total control of the education department in New York City. Educating our children was the last thing on his mind. It was a business decision. Our schools are being turned into mini prisons.